You're going to introduce it. Okay, so I think I recognise you from somewhere. I'm trying to think where it is. Please introduce yourself and where we are at the minute.
Hi there, we're at the Retreat Animal Rescue in Kent, and as you can see, it's a paradise on earth, and this is where I practically live.
And who are you?
Sorry, Constance.
Hello.
I'm
Thank
so
you,
in love with the
Constance.
place that I talk about this than me.
Yeah, I know.
And here we are, these are our musketeers here. Introduce yourselves.
I'm Alfie and this is Elsa.
And who are you here with?
I'm here with my uncle that runs the place.
Okay, so Billy's your
Billy,
uncle, yeah. And what do you think that the an open day does to get people to think about animals and veganism?
Better. We raise a lot of money for the animals, and especially because the running cost of just haying straw is £10,000 a month.
What do you think effect that people who maybe have never thought about animals before, do you think that many will go away and they will think about veganism?
Yep, I think so, yeah.
Do you ever speak to people that come here and talk to them about veganism and animal rights?
As well, so.
Yeah?
And I talk about veganism and stuff like that.
So when the weather's like this, you think that this is obviously a bonus because more people will come, and does that make people more open to listening because the weather is a bit more acceptable?
Yeah.
And do you want to say anything and say hello to people?
Say hello. Wave.
Okay.
No.
Maybe you don't really want to at the minute, but I can
Elsa's
understand
already learning how to handle animals in a loving way.
Yeah.
And how old is Elsa now, Alfie?
2.
She's 2. She's just turned 2. And she is Alfie's little sister.
Yeah.
Now the guys go around, take groups of people that might have randomly just Googled animal sanctuary to take their kids to.
So can I just talking about the sanctuary itself? Sorry to interrupt you, Constance. I mean, I think we first met on the streets of London.
We did indeed.
On a demonstration or a march or something. Can I just ask you to tell me where people, because it's called the Retreat Animal Sanctuary, Ashford, isn't it?
It's called the Retreat Animal Rescue Farm Sanctuary.
And what's the postcode?
I believe it's something like...
It's TN26?
3LJ.
Okay, so that for anyone that wants to come here, how often do you have open days?
About once a month.
Okay, and when does it sort of close down?
October.
Okay, so for anyone that wants to come and visit, they can come most weekends anyway, or even during the week.
Thursday to Sunday.
Thursday to
Okay, so tell me a bit more so that anyone watching can come and they can find out a bit more.
So we're open Thursday to Sunday, 12 till 4. We've recently just opened a cottage.
Yeah, cow cottage.
Yep, cow cottage.
In honour of the cows.
So people can come stay. People can come volunteer whenever they want. Just turn up on the day, say I want to volunteer. They'll get you signed up, and
Have you seen the painting that someone did of Myrna?
Do
you know who did that?
No.
Oh.
I did it, and I gave it to Billy. And said you can do with it whatever you want. You can raffle it. And what he told me, he said that he was going to do with it was that he would put it into the shop, and then for them to sell it. But then he would buy it so that the money would go to the sanctuary. So you see, we're trying what we can to help people understand this. So because I've just been speaking with a couple of young children. And said to them the next time they come to bring apples and lettuce and carrots and other things so that they can feed the pigs.
Absolutely.
And one of them said, will they eat strawberries? I said, bring strawberries, watch what they'll do.
Absolutely. But I'm just going back. Why I'm going back, it's regarding veganism directly. Because you asked that question. Yeah. And even though Alfie has veganized more people than we know, the reality is that when people Google animal sanctuary, they come here not knowing, and that's why sometimes subtle is good too. Yeah. I'm very vocal when I'm out at demonstrations, but this brings people in unbeknown to them that it's an actual vegan sanctuary. I've just introduced them to Billy Bramble, the love of my life, the turkey. They didn't know it was a turkey. It was a turkey.
Yeah.
Because they came down for a fun day out.
Yeah.
So this is another way to help people understand and connect with animals, is that it's not screaming vegan compound with vegan calf. It is there, but that's not the main thing when you Google the retreat.
But then when you're saying that about Billy and they don't realise that they don't know that Billy Bramble is a turkey, that's part of the problem that many humans have. This disconnect that we've got with other animals.
Absolutely.
That when we go into shops and buy flesh or eggs, or we go into a restaurant and we buy meals, we don't actually see that they're animals. We just see terms like steak, beef,
pie,
pork,
wings,
sausages, ham.
Terrible.
All of these words are used by the industry to disconnect us from the living sentient beings that they are, that we've used and exploited. And then you have to explain to people that veganism isn't a diet. That diet is part of being vegan. Veganism is not about using animals for any purpose, whether that's food or
and this
clothes
is why this
or
helps
sport.
them.
And that's it, because then they make that connection.
Absolutely. You see, for example, last open day, it was a Hug a Cow raffle.
Yeah.
And there was a massive crowd here, all lined up, even farmers. And the girlfriend wanted to hug a cow. And he said, but what about hugging one of ours? She said, no, I know they live here. They're not going to be hurt. This was her boyfriend's farm she was talking about.
Yeah.
So he had to wait for her while everyone was hugging and kissing the cows. See, this is what happens.
Yeah.
And it might be just that one connection at that point, but he's already tapped into something completely different to what he's doing that he thinks is normal.
Yeah. I mean, I've just been in the field with the pigs and been hugging a couple of them. And the two children that I was talking about, they were with their mum. And they said, what's that man doing in there? And she said, he's having a hug with the pigs. And can we go in? And I said, well, you'll have to ask your mum. And mum was okay with it, came in and brought them in. And the little boy was possibly 3, 4, and he was a little bit tentative. And I said, look, there's no need to be afraid.
Good.
If you're afraid, they will pick up on that. They're not going to hurt you. And trying to get them to realise this connection, you know, and talking to them and saying,
absolutely,
look, they show you how soft and kind and gentle they are. That's why we mustn't hurt them in any way.
Absolutely.
And then they begin to understand.
Yes,
this.
and it's so important, isn't it, to start it as early as possible.
Yeah.
Because I had that in a twisted way. My grandmother didn't allow me to just pull the little chick, because there was a chicken with little chicks, and she didn't allow me to pull it. She picked it up and she said no, and she put it in the palm of my hand, gave it to me to hold, and then put it back with its mother.
Yeah.
Now from that though, she was eating animals, so the disconnect was there, but there she planted a seed, and it took a long time. I was 23 years vegetarian before the last 3.5 years as a very active vegan, because I believe I am, or I try to be. It's you breathe it, you sleep it, you dream it, you breathe it.
You know that I'm a full-on.
Oh, you are very full-on.
And I'm not an apologist. Am I? I mean, no one accused.
Be.
No.
And you know, whenever I am apologetic, I try to work it out to see why am I doing that.
Yeah.
Because it's another barrier that we have to overcome.
That's a question that I want to ask you about apologetics and apologists and apologism. Why do you think that happens?
I guess we feel bad and we don't know how to say it.
Could I suggest that it's the people that we're talking to?
Yes.
They are so conditioned and so indoctrinated that when we bring up issues, and it doesn't necessarily have to be about veganism, it could be about any form of injustice.
Yes.
When we bring it up, they feel guilty.
Yes.
Then they say, you've made me feel guilty.
Yes.
And my point about that is, I haven't made you feel guilty.
No.
I've told you some facts. I've told you some truth. I've been honest about it. What's made you feel guilty is your conscience.
Absolutely. But we revert, don't we?
Yeah.
We revert. And sometimes I guess, because you know, I think, was it Yurovsky that said, it's not how many people you talk to, it's how many people you convince.
Yes.
So I guess we get scared. This is an opportunity don't want to miss it because this person's in front of you. They're inquiring or they're giving you a moment. That moment you think, has that been stolen by me being too loud, too honest? Because it's the truth, it's the honesty, that's all we're sharing. And they're not ready for it. So you're thinking, right, I'll revert back a little, you know? And step back. And I don't like it when I do it either. I don't like it.
Now that's your inner being is saying, no, don't hold back.
Absolutely.
And yes, you're right. The more people that you speak to, you have the chance to convince more people. And the more honest you are and you don't sugarcoat the facts. And when you think about what Gary Yorossi said, I mean, okay, there are some people who don't like some of the things that he said. And I can understand that. You can't like everything about everyone because we're all learning about other issues as well. And we might be involved in other issues. I know there are some people who realise that not only am I a vegan animal rights activist, I'm an advocate for resource-based economy because I look at what causes us to behave the way in which we do.
Absolutely. And then you tap into a lot of things, don't you?
Because if we do that, I think I recognise this person here. Hold on, can you come and join in with our conversation, please? Because I've just recognised another activist friend. So can you?
Hi, of course I know you.
So can you introduce yourself, Lucy, where you're from and how we know each other?
I'm Lucy, I'm from Weybridge in Surrey and I know you through other activism events.
Yes, you see. And is this your first time here at the retreat?
Second time, no, third time.
Okay, same as me. So Constance has been explaining that she does a lot of work here and all the things that she believes that come from a sanctuary. Can you tell me what you think a sanctuary like this does to get others to think about animal rights?
Just shows people that animals have unique characters and they have personalities, like every animal is so different, and I think it just helps people connect with them.
So true.
Isn't that what we were saying? That
Absolutely.
that when people go into a shop or a restaurant, the disconnect between what they're eating or what they're wearing, because they don't see the living sentient being that product once was, you know, and that we see animals as commodities and property, rather than living sentient beings just like us. So. It's great seeing two people that I already know here, and
it's wonderful to see so many people coming down as well, though, to support. Because for me, sometimes people say, "Oh, you know, you're doing more for the rescue now than activism." It's a strong side of activism.
Well, that's my point. I would say that this is just another form of activism.
Yeah.
Activism takes many forms. You know, this is a form of activism. We do the Cube of Truth. We might do Earthlings. I don't know whether you've done any DXE type disruptions, but I know that you've been on sort of the big animal rights march. Yeah. So there's so many different ways. There's liberations. There's so many forms of activism that this is an equally valid part, because this is at the real hands-on end of it, because this is where animals have been rescued from slaughter or been saved. I mean, you know, Myrna and Fiona and mother and daughter
came here one day old,
and Myrna was born here. You know, so this is an equally important aspect, because as more people learn about veganism and animal rights, then as the demand drops, you know, this is when we say to people, well, what's going to happen to those animals? Are we just going to go and kill them? No, they're already sanctuaries. Other places will be turned into sanctuaries. So just imagine the people that might come here and visit this and think, I'd like to set one of these.
Many have. I've heard them. They've come up and inquired. That's why I think Billy should really, if you can, have the time, one of the outer houses to create a teaching room on rescue, because it's complicated.
Well, there is already a teaching room.
Yes.
I mean, I did a talk in there for about 10 minutes or so this afternoon.
Oh, did you? Oh, I missed it. Oh, sorry so much. I was just feeding animals. But I personally believe and that's just my humble belief, if we could possibly put the biggest vegan sanctuary on this planet, then I think people will pay attention. I'd love that. You know how they've got the biggest dog rescue, and the dogs just roam around. There's a couple of thousand dogs.
And where's this?
I can't remember if it's in Brazil. It's one of the biggest dog rescues, and the dogs just roam freely. I would.
What is it like, soy dog?
It's like soy dog, but it's more, the dogs are roaming around naturally. It's like a massive field, a massive compound, and there's a river that runs through it. And also, I'd love that to happen. With farm animals.
Yeah.
Put it on the map, like for people to say, oh my God, this is where, you know, tortured and abused, almost slaughtered animals are living, and it's the biggest in the world. I wish we could do that right here. I'd love to be able to expand this and take over the whole of Kent. I mean, it's a big dream, but it's doable. Others have done other things. So
look, this is one of the things that I try and thank you for joining in as well, Lucy, because I mean this is really good, because I this isn't about me, but it's trying to share knowledge with other people and then get people to realise that when we cooperate with each other and work with each other, then we help these things happen. And the more ideas and the more that we learn about socio-economic problems and why, then we actually listen to what people say that they would want to do, and then it's like, well, that's possible. It's not that it can't happen, it's how are we going to make it happen, and who's going to be involved in it. And as I said, the more that we reduce the demand for animal exploitation, then we're going to need more places like this. And that goes back to what you were saying about Billy. Perhaps he should be doing talks on people so they can understand not how to treat animals, but to understand animal needs. And what it because requires. It's difficult for us, because we've been, as we're going back to that disconnection, we don't understand their voices. Some obviously do, they're well aware, they can. I know this young lady here is someone who rescues animals. Would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Hello Michael.
Hello Michelle. Thanks, Lucy. Thank you, Lucy. Can you tell me, I mean, I know that recently you were telling me about one of the chickens that you had, and the cat, and the problem that she had with the cystitis. Yes. Would you tell me this? Because
I've had her since a kitten. I used to work for a vet, and they were abandoned on the doorstep, a 24-hour clinic, early hours of the morning in the middle of winter, and were nearly dead on arrival. And the head nurse there, gave them a lot of care. She brought them back round, and they needed to be hand reared. So I decided to take them home and hand rear them. Bottle feeding them and looking after them, and I mean she's 18 now, and she's still with us, but part of one of her conditions was that she gets stress cystitis, which means that she's squatting in the litter tray, she's trying to pee, she can't pee, she pees blood. It's very painful.
Can you tell me what caused the stress?
She jumped out of a window and she broke both of her back legs. She had to have some cage rest, and it just made her quite a nervous cat in the end. But this was treated, obviously their legs and everything were treated, but after that she'd still get the cystitis, and it was very painful for her, so she was prescribed a drug to take care of that, and it doesn't taste very nice. I've accidentally got it in my mouth and I can tell you it doesn't taste very nice, but when she was, after a time of this going on, she would get to a point where she would start feeling the pain, and she would come and find me wherever I was in the house, and she would meow, and I'd say, come on, what's going on, and she'd get up and she'd turn around and put her bottom in the air and meow at me, and she's letting me know this is happening again, I'm in pain and I know that you can help me. And I would go to the kitchen and start getting her medicines down, and she would come and jump up on the counter, and she'd sit there and wait for her medicine, even though it tasted disgusting and she couldn't have enjoyed it. She would sit there and she would wait for her medicine, because she understood that I'm going to help you, and I've helped you before, and I understand that what you're doing and what you're giving me is going to relieve my pain and make me feel better. And when people say, animals, they don't understand, they're not like us, they can't talk, they can't tell you whether they're in pain, and they can tell us a lot of things.
I think
They've
this
got
is
their own language.
I think this is what I was trying to sort of like elicit from Constance, was that animals do have a voice, you know. It's just that we don't necessarily understand them. When I talk with people, say on activism, outreach events or whatever, and people say, oh, but they're only animals, they don't have intelligence like we do. Then I might say to someone, ¿puedes hablar en español? And they look at me. And I said, you see, you don't speak Spanish, but I can speak that. Well, that would be just the same as
Why
another
should they
animal
have
that speaks a
intelligence
language that we
like
don't
us?
understand.
Why do they have to have the same intelligence as us?
Yeah.
You know, a human child doesn't have the same intelligence, the same, you know, knowledge of life as we do. They can't communicate with us. They've got no language apart from, you know, as they get older, the sounds. You know, I've got a little boy, he's 18 months. He says to me, and I know what he means. He wants that, whatever he's pointing at. You know, does that mean that he should not be protected from harm, and his pain doesn't matter, his suffering doesn't matter, because he can't tell me that it matters? You know, just because their intelligence is different from ours, it doesn't make it any less worthy. I
think this is something that Jeremy Bentham tried to talk about in a very short couple of sentences. Excuse me, anyone who's watching. Something, it's not whether they can reason, it's not whether they can communicate. I probably got it wrong. It's can they suffer?
Can they suffer?
And that's the point. Whether it's a human animal or any other animal, every sentient being can feel pain. It can understand the world
and
around
the majority
them.
of people will have one pet or another at home, or a rescue animal at home, a dog or a cat or a gerbil, you know, whatever they might have, and they know if you step on a cat's foot or on their tail while you're, you know, doing something, and you hear it, they yelp, they cry when they're hurt or they're ill. You see their suffering, you see their pain. Everybody, I think, knows that they suffer, but it's the value that they attach to their suffering. It's not a question of do they suffer. We know they suffer. Anyone who's ever come into contact with any type of animal will know that they can suffer, but it's whether people value that, and whether people think that they are as worthy as we are to life, and to not suffering, and to not experiencing pain, and to having love and care. And I think a lot of that comes from, I mean, I read a study recently about children in schools and young children in cities, and it was saying that, you know, most children now have never heard a real pig sound or a cow moo. They've never seen a chicken in real life, or touched their feathers, or, you know, they have no connection from the animals to their food or the suffering. And you know, unless you actually have when you learn that an animal can suffer, and you learn to read their language, which you can when you've got rescue animals especially, you know, they'll have all sorts of issues and you can read them. You know they're telling you that they need something, and it's for us to try and work out. It's our intelligence that's in question. Can I work out what you need?
I saw that last night when I arrived with Billy and Georgie, and Billy was all over me, and then Georgie, being really nervous because of what's happened to her, they were both showing in different ways their reaction or their response and the stimuli to events that had happened in their lives. And they were both saying that they wanted something, but it was completely different than the way that they were expressing it was different.
Personality. Yeah. And this is what I was going to come to say that every animal, like every person, has their own unique personality, and children, people in general, you know, they're not exposed to it. They don't spend time with animals. If you spend time with animals, then you get to know their personalities, like people do with their dogs at home, their cats at home. You'll hear people who eat meat and who aren't, you know, necessarily concerned with the cruelty that their diet and their lifestyle is you know, causing, say about their dog in the next sentence after eating a burger or something, oh, he's so funny, yeah, he always does that, and he's this and he's that. It's their personality, and people understand that animals have a personality. And then you'll see the most unlikely people who have just randomly come into contact with a duck or a chicken, or and you see these videos on YouTube, someone takes their duck out with them on walks and takes them travelling with them, and one that I saw recently was a chicken that the man's dog had passed away, and he'd then bonded with this chicken, and then he treated the chicken just in the same way that he had the dog, took her everywhere with him, and they had a relationship and a bond and an understanding.
I mean, that's...
It comes when you spend time with them.
Exactly, and you learn. I mean, when I did that little talk earlier, that I said I wouldn't consider myself specifically to be an animal lover, but you don't have to love other animals, or you don't have to love other humans to not want to cause them harm. And you know that nearly everything that I do is about helping to change the system that creates our behaviours.
That is a lot of what people say, is that, but you're an animal lover, you have this bond with animals.
And it's like, why are you making that assumption?
You to be an animal lover. I'm not asking you to bond with every sparrow that flies into your garden, but what I'm saying is don't hurt them.
What gives you the knowledge to make that assumption that I'm an animal lover? And it reminded me that I've done a couple of marches recently where I was asked to do some speeches, and in the second of them I brought up this point where most people in this country, if they saw bullfighting, they'd be appalled at it, and they would say, we've got to stop this and we've got to ban this. And I tried to show how speciesist they are in that respect, because whilst they're saying bullfighting's terrible, they won't consider the fact that they might be eating from the cow, or they're wearing the flesh of a cow.
It's the culture that we're raised in, and the difference between the animals that we're exposed to. And anyone that has, sees the bulls and sees how horribly they're treated can say, oh, that's absolutely wrong. I can see that that's wrong. That's for sport, and it's wrong, and it's awful. But we've had fox hunting in this country, been legal up until quite recently, and people will say, oh, it's fine because they're vermin. We know that they are bred to be hunted. With most hunting, they're bred to be hunted. It's a sport. It's considered a sport, and these animals suffer horribly. Now, there are a lot of people in this country that are against fox hunting.
You see, I mean, can I just interject on that point? You see, because not only is it the foxes that are being exploited,
it's every animal.
It's the dogs, it's the horses. You see, even those animals are being exploited by selfish, ignorant humans for their pleasure. And then these are people who say, but we're helping to look after the environment, we're helping conservation of animals. How can you be conserving animals and concerned about animal beings when you're actually using at least 3 for your pleasure? This is nothing about conservation or environmental concerns.
People want to look for excuses for reasoning the culture that they're raised in and the things that they've been taught to accept that are acceptable. It's acceptable to eat pigs. They're an animal that is eaten. This is what people think. That's acceptable. But if somebody came into contact with a pig, bonded with a pig, spent time around pigs, saw their personalities, their beautiful nature, then all of a sudden they're thinking, I don't like this. If I think about that pig that I saw at the sanctuary, and the personality and the way he came and he took the carrot and he was all, lovely, and, we had a really lovely experience with him. And then I think about him being in that situation. People separate it. They say, but they're eating animals and they're different animals, but we're all animals.
But you might look at that pig and then think, well, actually, that pig isn't ham. That pig is not bacon. That pig is not sausages. In fact, I've just been, and I literally have been in the field where all those pigs were, and I've been cuddling with some of them.
And when people make statements like that, bacon, or I like a ham sandwich, it's not, I'm not angry with people for making those statements. I recognise
stupidity and ignorance.
That this is defence. That's the first feeling that I get from people.
It's stupidity.
They feel a defence, and I believe that the reason they feel so defensive of those actions.
Hello, Elliot. We're at the sanctuary on their open day today. Thanks for tuning in. This is Michelle, by the way.
Elliot.
Oh, you know Elliot, don't you? Yes. Sorry.
And I understand that what they're really doing is being defensive, because somewhere, I believe, in their heart, they do know that it is wrong to hurt an animal. to murder an animal so that they can eat an animal's flesh because it tastes good. You know, we know what's moral and what's not, and I think that the majority of people do know that, but they are just so shut off from the experience and from being up close with animals and really getting to experience their personalities and that bond, that it's far too easy for them to just say, well, that's the way we've always done things and I like a bacon sandwich, so, you know, I'm so far removed from the slaughterhouse that don't put that on me. I didn't kick a pig, I didn't hurt a pig, somebody else did that. You know, but they have to realise the connection between what happens in the slaughterhouse, the suffering that these animals experience, and their part in that. When you go into the shop and you buy a product, you are labelling that animal as a product. And every time you go and spend money on it, you're funding the slaughterhouse.
You see,
and that is the connection that people don't often make. And when you can actually have time with somebody to sit down and have a discussion, the majority of people, even if they don't change, will say, I do understand what you're saying and I do agree it is wrong, but this is the way I've been raised. It's, you know, an excuse. They're trying to find a reason. They want it to be somebody else's mistake. You know, but really, they do understand that it is wrong.
Don't you understand? That's what I was going to say. Don't you think, and I'm sure that you would agree with me, that that's what, as activists, we do. We actually try and get people to align their practices with the values that they hold, that they already know.
Yeah.
And that we're not trying to make them feel guilty. I mean, I said it with Constance earlier. When they say that, oh, you're trying to make me feel guilty. No, we're not. We're telling you what happens. We're telling you the reality. If you feel guilty, it's your conscience that's making you feel guilty.
But the majority of people, the majority of vegans, at some point in the past, have been meat eaters.
I was one.
You know? The majority of us have. The only difference between us, we're all human, the only difference between us is that we've seen something and we've recognised that we don't want to be a part of it. And now we're out there talking to other people, trying to say, listen, I did all the same things, I believed all the same things that you did, but now I have new information and I want to share that information with you because I believe that you are, the majority of people are actually good people.
And it was an activist, similar to the way we are now, that got you to consider veganism, and it's how you became vegan. Yeah. And that's the point. That's all we are. People get this thing about activism.
Somebody came in and, you know, she had lots of rescues and I questioned it. Oh, you have so many rescues, isn't that lovely? And she said, I'm vegan. And I said, oh, I'm a vegetarian. And I thought she'll be impressed with that. And she said, And I thought, oh. And I said, well, is that not quite good enough then? What exactly is a vegan? And she said, well, if you ever really want to know, I'll explain it to you. And I said, I would like to know. And later on we sat down, we had a conversation and I asked all my questions and she explained to me the cruelty of the dairy industry, the egg industry, the reason that she had all of these rescue chickens.
Which weren't they from vivisection and experimentation?
She had all kinds of animals from different backgrounds, from animal testing to rescued ex-battery hens that had come in a horrible condition, you know, and she gave them really good care. And I realised, speaking to this woman, that this is the loveliest person I've ever spoken to in my life. This woman is really special and I want to know everything that you know. Tell me everything, because I was so shocked. And I said to her, but I'm a vegetarian, I don't eat animals. And, you know, what's wrong with drinking milk? No one's hurting a cow to milk a cow. But when she explained to me the dairy industry and just the basic things that we don't actually think about, but they are common sense, but we just have been taught differently so that we ignore the common sense. You know, you have a dairy cow, you're drinking its milk. A cow is a mammal, the same as a human. We only produce milk for our babies, therefore a cow just had a baby to produce milk. Where's the baby? Where's the baby who's supposed to be drinking the milk if we're drinking it? Sadly, they've either gone to the same fate as mum and they'll be raised in the dairy industry. They've been taken from their mother and, you know, the males will be killed because they don't produce milk, and the females will go back into the dairy industry and they'll be impregnated and they'll have their babies taken from them. And, you know, I was really upset by this. I thought, I'm actually going into the supermarket and I'm buying 6 pints of milk without a single thought of it, not realising that actually I am causing harm.
Would you therefore say that any human female who is a feminist must be vegan?
Absolutely. If they have the knowledge that I have, that is the only way that they can be, if they're being honest with themselves. And I think any mother who's ever breastfed a child will understand that it's more than just milk. It's not about just milk. It's about a bond with your baby. It's about the immune system. It's about lots of different things. Your body can find in saliva from your baby what the baby needs.
Hi, Angie.
And produce it in the milk. Your body reads their body and it produces what they need to be healthy. By taking a baby cow away from their mother, it's traumatic, and this is done for a dairy cow many times in their life, and they're full of milk. And people say, well, they have to be milked, you can't just leave them and they'd be in pain. Yes, they would be in pain, but that, so would I if somebody took my baby away from me and put me on a breast pump 3 times a day. I'd also be in pain.
But isn't this the problem? You see, the dairy industry is artificially inseminating a mother each year in order to make her pregnant. If we stopped doing that, then she wouldn't be pregnant, and therefore she wouldn't be producing the milk. Ergo, she wouldn't be in the pain because there's no need for her to not be milking.
Absolutely.
And this is the same
it's
when
a completely unnecessary process.
And people say, but it's part of the circle of life. It's the food chain. When you actually say, well, it isn't, because a bull is artificially ejaculated, the semen is taken, then artificially inseminated, which, because it's exploitation of the genitals of the cow and the bull even, then it's a form of rape. And yet people don't like this terminology.
They don't like it because it does seem very harsh if it's a subject that you're new to, and I think that's why, a lot of activists will come under criticism because they'll say meat is murder and dairy is rape, and people are offended by it. But, it's people use this terminology because they want you to think about it in human terms.
Yes.
If you did this to a human, that's what it would be. If you killed a human, it would be murder. And if you insert anything into a human forcibly, that is rape. And that is what they do to dairy cows, because they have apparatus that they insert into them.
Is this the same as with pigs when they call it the rape rack?
The rape rack, which it's known in the industry. This is not a terminology that vegans have come up with or activists have come up with. This is a terminology that farmers have come up with.
I mean, what did I show? What's that little piece of equipment that I showed you this morning that prevents the calf from suckling on mother, and if it does, because of the spikes, would harm the mother's udder and she would move away.
And I've actually seen that contraption that you showed me. I've actually seen it in practice on video.
And they call it a milk suck preventer. So this is the industry itself calling it, not us.
That's not us, no. That's the farmers. And they are saying that, they put these contraptions on the calves' mouths to prevent them from taking the milk from their own mother. And they say, well, we're keeping the calf with the mother, but then they're not allowing them to feed from their mother because they want the milk for the industry. And you see the distress from the mother trying to feed her baby, and it's painful to her, and that's distressing because she wants to nurse her child. And you see the distress with the baby as well, obviously, because they're craving that bond with their mother, the milk, the warmth, the comfort. And what are they being given in replacement?
Okay, and as to sort of like wind up, because I know that we've been doing this for quite a while now, and I've taken you unawares, Michelle. Just tell me, what products is that milk used to produce? List the products that we then have taken from a kidnapped baby, stolen the baby's milk, which the mother produced for her baby, which she wouldn't have produced if she hadn't have been made pregnant in the first place. Tell me what products are made with that milk so that people can understand.
Your cow's milk. You go into the supermarket, buy 6 pints of milk in any variety, and that's what you're buying. Your yogurts, your cheeses, anything that is a dairy product. cream.
Ice creams.
Ice cream, you know, a huge one. There's such a thing. You know, we give it to the children and it's a treat.
What did I say to you this
you're
morning?
Taking from one child to give to another. One is a...
When we were on the way here this morning, and I told you about 4 young females that I saw yesterday, and they were eating ice creams. What was the term that I called it?
Rape on a cone.
Yeah, and it is. It's rape on a cone.
And as I said to you, it's not about attacking anybody. It's about, if you'd have said to them, oh, you know, you're eating ice cream but dairy is cruel, then, you know, they probably would have just shrugged you off and said, okay, fine, that's your opinion. But if you make a statement like that, people will go away and they're going to think on it. They're going to think, what a strange thing to say. Why would he say that? That's such a strange thing to say. What you're actually doing is you're giving them the key to the lock of information that they need, so that they can go away and they might type that into Google, or they might look, why would, you know, dairy be called rape? And then they're going to have this whole world of information opened up to them. It's all out there,
you know,
and it's all honest truth on the internet. It's not lied about.
Yeah, and that's what, you know, you realise in the way that I talk. When I talk to people, I try and not use the sort of terminology and words that they currently use, because if we use that, they're not going to think and they're not going to question.
People are programmed to hear the truth about things and immediately reject it. If you say to them, you know, that it's cruel to do these things, they say, we know it's not, because, you know, or milk is good for you. Well, we know milk's good for us, you know, and you say, well, actually milk's not good for you. And if you actually look at the scientific research, you'll see that actually it's quite bad for your health, dairy milk. And they'll say, no, I don't believe that. But if you give them something that, okay, is something they've not heard before, they're more likely to go away, research it and wonder, what on earth are you talking about?
Okay, on that score, if you had someone here right now and you were talking about this and they were poo-pooing it, which references would you suggest that they go and look at to find out about this?
Well, I would say to them to watch things on YouTube like Dairy is Scary, The Milk Industry in 60 Seconds, things like that, which are very quick to watch.
Yeah.
And that is really just a taster. Once people have watched that, they then might start researching. I always say to people, don't necessarily go and watch what I tell you to watch. You know, there are documentaries that you can go and watch, but look it up yourself.
I'm talking more from a nutritional point of view. I know there was a book that I told you about and that you said you were going to get hold of.
You've got a book, I think it's Michael Greger.
Dr. Michael Greger.
That's right, and he's a doctor.
And what's the book called?
It's called How Not to Die.
Do you know what the website link to that is?
I don't know what it is.
It's nutritionfacts.org.
Right.
So this is what I mean. It's like,
I've actually bought the book.
Yeah.
I've started reading it.
It's an amazing book, isn't it?
You can reference it, so you don't have to sit and read the whole thing. You can flick to the things that are relevant to you, and you can
that's
read it.
the point.
But I think that the first part of it, the first couple of pages where you read his story and how he came to, you know, write these books and educate people the way that he does.
Because it was about his grandmother.
And she had been diagnosed with cancer and it was untreatable. They could do nothing for her. And he heard of this doctor who was trying alternative therapies. And it was, you know, really a shot in the dark. But they managed to get her into this clinic, and it was this guy's clinic. And, you know, he put them on a strict vegan diet and he treated them naturally. And she recovered. And, you know, they didn't think that this was possible. She'd been told by, you know, medical people, it's not possible, you know, you're terminal, this is not possible, and you're very shortly going to be dead. And this guy was a doctor, you know, and the one thing as well that he says in the book is that even though you go through so many years of medical training, the amount of nutritional training that you actually do is very, very small. And when he realised that and he questioned it, because he understood the relationship between what we eat and how our body functions, is that, you know, he has tried to educate people on how you can be well by what you eat.
I mean, this to me is one of the things that I've brought up with people when I'm doing outreach. You know, I might come across to some people as being loud and aggressive and full on and extreme and confrontational and everything, but it's about getting people to learn. And yet, part of the Hippocratic Oath states, do no harm. So surely the best way that any medical practitioner can do no harm is to learn what causes our ill health in the first place.
Yes.
Because if we think that we are an intelligent species, then becoming ill in order to pay someone to then try and get us better is not a sign of intelligence when we could prevent that happening in the first place.
And of course what we would all like, having known this, is we would all like to be able to go to our local GP and be told how we can actually prevent these illnesses, how we can get better without fistfuls of medication and treatments, and how we can actually look after ourselves. A lot of people don't realise and they don't understand nutrition. They don't, well, what do you eat? This is the question people ask me so often, but what do you eat? Because they don't have the knowledge and they think, well, we're told that meat's good for us, we're told dairy's good for us, we go into the supermarket and we just buy whatever's on the shelf. We assume that's good for us because that's what we're told it's good for us. You know, we need doctors to be able to have much more training in nutrition, to be able to tell us, actually, this is what you need to eat. You have a condition, you can feel better, but not if you're putting all this processed junk into your body. You know, meat and dairy products that are linked to cancer, and there's no denying it. There's scientific proof that these are linked.
This is one of the things that I've
places
often...
like the, you know, cancer research charities are putting recipes on their website with links to meat and dairy.
Yeah. This is one of the things that I've actually said to people when I'm doing outreach, because I realise how ignorant I've been and how ignorant I still am, because there's so much for us to learn. But the more you realise our ignorance, that opens you up to learning, and then you become like the child again that wants to know. They want to know this, they want to know that. So you're going to start asking questions. And I recently realised, although I've been saying it for people, but the more I do learn and research, or research and learn, is that actually nutrition is a relatively new science compared to our culture and our traditions and our habits. Because when people say that, oh, I'm a nutritionist, and you say, yeah, but and what's your nutrition in? And it's basically plant-based because, animal-based, because that's the culture in which we've been brought. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to do this, Michelle. You've given a lot of time, and I'm sure that you've shared some invaluable information with people, and hopefully this will go out and other people will share it. Thank you very much.
All right.